friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the Transparent Tarot 2nd edition and give you some of my impressions. Also talk about some little problems that I have with the deck and how I'm trying to fix them. So real quick, first of all, the deck comes in a very sturdy magnetic closure box. It has a white satin tarot cloth that comes with it, and that's necessary because since the cards are transparent, you know, they don't really show up well on every surface. You need a light colored surface to use them and have them look their best. So there are full walkthroughs and you know, discussions of the deck in the book. The book I find to be fantastic. It's got a lot of great information about the meanings of the cards and also how to layer the cards together, because one of the really nice things about this deck is that since the cards are transparent, you can layer 1, 2, 3, however many you'd like on top of each other for your reading. You can lay them out one by one, or you can layer them, and the layering works with this deck, layering on top of each other. You can also layer them on top of other tarot decks or oracle decks or whatever you may like to do. This is just a little sheet that came in the box. So what I'm gonna do, just so I can kind of show the issue with the cards. So this is how the cards arrive. They're bowed really badly. And you know, no matter how many times you kind of press them back in the opposite direction, it doesn't really seem to help. There were also quite a few raised bits from the production process, little raised pieces of plastic. I took a little bit of very fine sandpaper and I just went over the edges really gently and took off some of those little hanger pieces that were sitting on there. But this bowing, I'm really disappointed in this because the deck is absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. And it costs $60. That's what I paid for it anyway. For $60, I just don't think I should have to do so much work to be able to, you know, to use the deck properly. This might not bother some people, but the reason it bothers me is that when I lay the cards down, they just don't lay flat. And you know, like, to me, for that price point, they should lay flat. Now, the first edition of this deck had its own issues, and the cards were covered with kind of like an oily coating, and so to use the deck, you really had to wash all of the cards and dry them individually. Now, I don't have the first edition. I'm going by what, you know, I've seen people discuss in other videos and online. Now, the 2nd edition has no oily coating, which is super, but it's got this bowing. So here's what I'm doing to try to fix the bowing. I have been taking the cards 2 at a time, and I have been using a hairdryer on them. And as you can see, I'm not sure if you can really tell from the camera, the one on this side is the unworked cards, and the one on this side is the cards that I've worked. They're not perfect. They're still bowing a tiny bit, but it's definitely a heck of a lot better. So for me, going through this process is improving them, and I might even give it a second round if it's just a matter of time. It takes a lot of time. So what am I doing? I am taking 2 cards at a time. You could try more, but doing more than that didn't seem to work as well for me. And I'm taking a hairdryer and heating up this, folding them back the opposite direction, taking a hairdryer in this center column essentially, and heating up the plastic a bit, and then kind of rolling them a little bit in my hands backward until they cool down. Then I check them and see, you know, are they still pretty badly bowed, or did that make it better? And if I have to do a second round, which I do, basically there has to go a second round, then I heat it up again, roll it kind of back and forth in my hands. And then sometimes by that point, you know, it started to straighten out a little bit. On most of the sets of 2, I'm having to do 3 rounds of of heating and rolling to try to get this curve out of the cards. One thing to note, or a few things to note, is that I'm showing this to try to help anyone who might have this issue with their cards. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you. But this is try it at your own risk, because the heat from a hairdryer will melt these cards. So if you are leaving the hairdryer on for too long, the plastic will melt. I'm doing it maybe 3 or 4 seconds. It's very quick with the hot hairdryer. And then I'm putting the hairdryer aside, and then I'm rolling it till it's completely cool, checking it. Is it improved? And then repeating the process. But you cannot leave the heat on the cards for really more than a few seconds at a time, because these will melt. And if you get them too hot and go back the other direction, you can permanently kind of bend them in the opposite direction, which is not what you want. I'm not trying to get them to lay flat. So it is working. It's just a very slow and tedious process. I just turned my TV on and turned the volume up, and I'm just kind of sitting and watching Halloween stuff. I'm on Todd and the Book of Pure Evil, which is one of my favorite shows right now. So, you know, I just don't think anyone should have to do this with a deck at this price point. However, I do think this deck is worth the effort. I'm going to put this aside. The other thing I did, because I really don't love this shiny material. Like I said, the first edition came with a cotton white cloth, kind of like you know, just sort of like a large bandana. And so it has a kind of a matte background. This is very shiny, and I don't like the way the cards look on it as much. So what I did was I took some white cardstock and I cut out some card shapes. And I don't really typically do card spreads more than 10 cards. It's just, you know, so I cut 10 of these. And then when I use these, and lay them out, I'll use the ones that I've worked on. You have a nice background. And I also made a box, which I'll show here in a second, and these fit right into the box. So I can, you know, kind of carry them around. I don't have to have a separate place to put the cloth, the spread cloth. So as you can see, as you layer these, here, let me try this one. You can see on the white background how nice that looks when the cards are layered together in a reading. But it also looks nice just, you know, when they're on their own. And this is working out really well for me. So that's just a tip. I just used a light matte cardstock. It was actually something I already had that I sometimes use for making boxes. Just plain white, and I used my guillotine cutter. I figured out the size of these cards, used my guillotine cutter, got them all cut out, and then I corner rounded them with a 5mm corner rounder. So that's how that worked. And again, I really think this deck is worth the effort. It's just a shame that to have to kind of go through all these extra steps to get the cards to lay I wouldn't even say flat. They lay more flat than they did when I took them out of the box, but they're still not entirely flat. So the other thing I was doing is after I'd heat them and kind of bend them back the opposite direction, I would warm them up again and lay them down in a pile with like heavy stuff on top of them, just to try to kind of, again, sort of get them set into a more flat kind of configuration. So I suppose that's really it for this one today. I love this deck. I really, really do. I think it's such a fantastic concept to have layerable tarot cards. It's so much fun and they're really beautiful. I just wish that, you know, I wish they kind of came out of the box ready to use without me having to do additional things to them. So hopefully you found this helpful. If the bend in the cards is bothering you, they are, again, better, not perfect, but they're better after having warmed them up. And because this is just, it's just not good. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. There might be other faster, better ways to do this. I was just trying to come up with a solution using things I already owned. I didn't want to have to go out and buy something to kind of, you know, make this work. I thought about maybe taking and putting a card around like a glass jar or a drinking glass, a straight-sided drinking glass, and then maybe like rubber banding it in place. But I just don't know how long, really you can only do 1 or 2 cards at a time like that. And then how long is it going to take for them to have to sit in that position before they're set? I really think that because they're plastic, without applying heat, I'm not sure if they're really going to stay in place. I think the heat is the key because of the material of the cards. However, if you have any other suggestions or ideas, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I would really love if there was an easier way to do this, because like I said, I'm still gonna have to go, after I finish this pile, this half the deck, I think I'm still gonna have to go through and work the whole deck, possibly a second time, to get them to even lay a little bit flatter. So thank you for popping by my channel. Hopefully this was helpful. I really recommend this. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I actually really do recommend this deck. I think it's worth the time and effort. It is a really interesting and fascinating concept, and it is really fun to play with these transparent cards, whether it's just with the deck itself or whether it's layering it on top of other decks. Have a wonderful day. That's it for me today.